She thought her boss was shy and innocent until she went into his room and found this. Hello, let's hear another incredible story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I love narrating stories for you, so get ready. Let's start. Jasmine Gray adjusted her forest green blazer one last time before stepping through the gleaming glass doors of Brook and Hart Publishing. The morning sun caught the brass lettering above the entrance, casting a warm glow that felt like a good omen. At 29, she'd finally landed the position she'd been working toward for years, executive assistant at one of Manhattan's most prestigious publishing houses. The lobby buzzed with the familiar energy of a Monday morning. The click of heels against marble floors, the whir of elevator doors, the distant chatter of literary dreams being bought and sold. Jasmine smiled, drinking in the atmosphere. This was her world now. Ms. Gray, a receptionist, caught her attention. Mr. Brooks is ready to see you. 14th floor, end of the hall. The elevator ride gave Jasmine a moment to center herself. She'd researched everything she could about Liam Brooks, the editorial director she'd be working for. His reputation in the industry was impeccable. Known for his keen eye for emerging talent and his reserved, almost old-fashioned approach to business. The interview process had been surprisingly smooth, though she'd found it difficult to get a read on him beyond his unfailing politeness. The elevator doors opened to a floor that smelled of coffee and new paper. Jasmine's heels sank into plush carpeting as she made her way down the hallway, past walls lined with framed book covers, the greatest hits of Brook and Hart's literary legacy. She found him exactly where she expected, standing by the window of his corner office, gazing out at the Manhattan skyline. Liam Brooks cut an elegant figure in his charcoal grey suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his posture perfect. When he turned to greet her, his smile was gentle, almost shy. "Good morning, Miss Gray. Welcome to Brook and Hart." His voice was soft, measured, like someone who carefully considered every word before speaking. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Please make yourself comfortable." Jasmine sat down, noting how he maintained a careful distance as he moved to his own chair. Everything about his office spoke of precision and restraint, from the perfectly aligned stack of manuscripts on his desk to the methodically organized bookshelf behind him. A single door to the right, which she assumed led to a private office space, was closed, and she noticed locked. "I hope you'll find everything to your liking," Liam continued, his blue eyes never quite meeting hers directly. "Regina, your predecessor, left detailed notes about our systems and procedures." "I appreciate that," Jasmine replied, pulling out her tablet. "I've already reviewed most of them. I notice you prefer traditional paper contracts over digital ones." A slight smile touched his lips. "Call me old-fashioned. There's something about the permanence of ink on paper that feels more authentic." Over the next hour, Liam walked her through her responsibilities, managing his schedule, coordinating with authors and agents, handling sensitive contracts and correspondence. His instructions were precise, his manner unfailingly polite. She noticed how he seemed to tense slightly whenever someone passed by his open office door, how he kept his hands clasped together on his desk. "Most importantly," he said, reaching the end of their orientation, "discretion is paramount in this position. You'll be privy to sensitive information, not just about our business operations, but about our authors and their work." "Of course," Jasmine nodded. "I understand completely." "Good." That gentle smile again, quick and controlled. "Then I believe we're ready to begin. Your desk is just outside. If you need anything." He trailed off, already turning his attention to a manuscript on his desk. As Jasmine settled into her new workspace, she couldn't help but smile. After years of dealing with demanding, ego-driven bosses in various publishing houses, working with someone as mild-mannered as Liam Brooks felt like a refreshing change. The man practically apologized for asking her to bring him coffee. Through that first week, Jasmine found herself developing a routine. Liam was predictable in his habits, arriving precisely at 8, taking lunch at his desk, leaving no later than 6. He spoke softly in meetings, letting others dominate conversations until he delivered his carefully considered opinions. He maintained a polite but distinct distance from everyone, especially the female employees who sometimes lingered hopefully around his office. "I swear," Jasmine told her best friend Tasha over drinks that Friday, "he's got to be the most inoffensive man in Manhattan." Yesterday, he actually blushed when an author tried to hug him after signing her contract. Tasha raised an eyebrow. Over her martini. "Nobody's that innocent in publishing, honey, especially not at his level." "Trust me," Jasmine laughed. "This one is. He's probably got a perfectly organized apartment where he reads manuscripts and drinks tea. The most scandalous thing in his life is probably an overdue library book. If only she knew how wrong she was." That very night, long after most employees had left for the weekend, Jasmine returned to the office. She needed to locate a contract for a morning meeting, and she knew exactly which filing cabinet held it. The floor was dark and quiet as she made her way to Liam's office, using her key to let herself in. The contract wasn't where it should have been. Frowning, Jasmine remembered seeing Liam carry some papers into his private office earlier that day. The door would be locked, of course, but she had the master key. For emergencies only, she'd been told. She hesitated for a moment, then made her decision. It was a work emergency after all. The key turned smoothly in the lock, and Jasmine pushed open the door. She froze. The private office was nothing like she'd imagined. The walls were covered with framed photographs, dozens of them, featuring stunning women in intimate settings. Handwritten letters were pinned carefully to a corkboard, alongside what looked like hotel room keys and small mementos. A glass display case held what appeared to be feminine garments, delicately preserved. But it was the carefully maintained journal on the desk that caught her eye. Open to a page filled with Liam's precise handwriting, it contained names, dates, and detailed notes about various women. Their preferences, their vulnerabilities, their secrets. Jasmine's heart pounded as realization dawned. The shy, reserved man who could barely maintain eye contact in meetings had been carefully cultivating a very different image than his reality. Liam Brooks, the most inoffensive man in Manhattan, was actually its most successful seducer. And she, Jasmine realized with a strange flutter in her stomach, was the only woman in the office he'd never even tried to charm. She backed out of the room quickly, locking the door with trembling hands. As she hurried toward the elevator, her mind raced with questions. Who was the real Liam Brooks? The shy, proper gentleman she'd come to know, or the calculated seducer whose private shrine she'd just discovered? More importantly, why did the revelation make her feel not just shocked or betrayed, but also intrigued? Monday morning arrived. With cruel swiftness, Jasmine sat at her desk, every nerve-ending alert as she waited for Liam's arrival. She'd barely slept all weekend, her mind replaying the discovery in his private office like a movie she couldn't pause. The photographs, the letters, the carefully preserved mementos, each piece revealing a man completely at odds with his public persona. The elevator chimed, and Jasmine's fingers stumbled on her keyboard. Liam appeared, impeccable as always in a navy suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His greeting was the same gentle good morning he offered every day. But now she caught something else in his eyes, a flash of awareness, quickly masked. "Coffee?" she asked, proud of how steady her voice remained. "Please." He paused at her desk instead of continuing to his office. "How was your weekend?" The question was innocent enough, but Jasmine felt the weight of unspoken words between them. Had he somehow known she'd been in his office? Was there a security camera she hadn't noticed? "Quiet," she replied, studying his face. "Caught up on some reading." His lips curved into that familiar, careful smile. "Anything interesting?" "You could say that." Jasmine met his gaze directly, challenging him to read between the lines. Something shifted in his expression, a microscopic crack in the polite facade. For a fraction of a second, she glimpsed a different man behind those blue eyes. Then he nodded and retreated to his office, closing the door softly behind him. Jasmine released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She rose to make his coffee, black, no sugar, served in the same cream-colored mug every morning. Such a precise man, she thought, with such careful habits. How many women had mistaken that precision for innocence, just as she had? The morning crawled by in a haze of tense awareness. Every time Liam emerged from his office, Jasmine felt the air change. She caught herself noticing things she'd overlooked before. The graceful confidence in his movements, so different from his supposedly shy demeanor. The way his voice, while still quiet, carried an undercurrent of authority. The subtle way he observed everything while appearing to notice nothing. "Miss Gray," his voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Could you join me for a moment?" Jasmine followed him into his office, her pulse quickening. He closed the door, something he'd never done before during their meetings. "I need your help with the Richardson contract," he said, moving to his desk. "The terms need to be revised before tomorrow's meeting." She watched as he sorted through papers, his movements deliberate and controlled. A week ago, she'd interpreted his careful distance as shyness. Now she wondered if it was actually calculation, every gesture designed to appear harmless. "Of course," she replied, taking the chair across from him. "What changes are we making?" He began explaining the revisions, but Jasmine found herself focused on his hands, elegant fingers that had probably written countless seductive notes, now moving precisely across legal documents. How many women had those hands touched? How many hearts had they broken? "Is everything all right, Miss Gray?" Jasmine startled, realizing she'd been staring. Liam was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. The pretense of shyness was gone, replaced by something more authentic. "I'm fine," she said, straightening in her chair, "just thinking about proper documentation." His eyebrow lifted slightly. "Documentation is crucial, isn't it? Keeping accurate records of important events." The double meaning hung in the air between them. Jasmine felt heat rise to her cheeks, but refused to look away. "Yes, some people are very thorough with their record keeping, while others," he replied softly, "prefer to keep their discoveries to themselves." The words were a quiet acknowledgement. He knew. Of course he knew. A man that careful would have ways of monitoring his private space. Jasmine's heart thundered in her chest, but she maintained her composure. "Some discoveries are better left undiscussed," she said, gathering the contract papers. "Will that be all, Mr. Brooks?" He studied her for a long moment, and Jasmine saw it again, that other version of him, the one who collected conquests like trophies. "For now," he replied, his voice carrying a new edge that sent shivers down her spine. Later that afternoon, Jasmine was reviewing the revised contract when Tasha's text lit up her phone. "Lunch? You looked stressed at yoga yesterday." They met at their usual spot, a quiet cafe 2 blocks from the office. Jasmine waited until they were seated with their salads before spilling everything. "A secret room," Tasha's eyes widened, "full of trophies from his conquests." "Like a museum of seduction," Jasmine confirmed, pushing a cherry tomato around her plate. "Photos, letters, clothing, all carefully preserved and catalogued. And he's been playing the shy, proper gentleman this whole time." Tasha leaned back, impressed despite herself. "That's some next-level game." "It's manipulation is what it is," Jasmine retorted. But she couldn't ignore the flutter in her stomach when she remembered the way he'd looked at her that morning. "He's probably planned out exactly how to seduce every woman who walks through those office doors." "Except you," Tasha pointed out. "You said he's never even tried." The observation hit home. Why hadn't he? Was she somehow immune to his usual tactics, or was there another reason he'd kept his distance? It doesn't matter, Jasmine said firmly. I'm not interested in becoming another exhibit in his private collection. Tasha studied her friend's face. Are you sure about that? Because you seem more intrigued than disgusted. I'm not, Jasmine began, but her protest was interrupted by a text notification. From Liam. Need you back at the office. Urgent matter. To discuss. Jasmine stared at the message, her pulse quickening. In all their previous interactions, he'd never texted her directly, always using email or the office messaging system. I have to go, she told Tasha, gathering her things. Work emergency. Sure it is, Tasha smirked. Just remember, sometimes the most dangerous games are the ones we actually want to play. The walk back to the office felt endless. Jasmine's mind raced with possibilities. Would he confront her about the room? Would he try to explain? Or would he maintain the facade, pretending nothing had changed? As she approached his office, she squared her shoulders and lifted her chin. Whatever game Liam Brooks was playing, she refused to be just another conquest in his collection. She was Jasmine Grey, and if anyone was going to change the rules, it would be her. She knocked on his door, and his soft, "Come in," carried a note she'd never heard before. Taking a deep breath, Jasmine turned the handle, ready to face whatever waited on the other side. The door closed behind Jasmine with a soft click that seemed to echo in the tension-filled office. Liam stood by the window, his back to her, Manhattan's afternoon light casting his silhouette in sharp relief. Gone was the hesitant posture she'd grown accustomed to. His shoulders were squared, his stance confident, a man who had finally dropped his mask. Lock the door, please. His voice was different too, lower, more commanding. Jasmine's hand moved to the lock before she could second-guess herself. The metallic click felt like a point of no return. You know, he began, still facing the window, in all my years of carefully orchestrated encounters, no one has ever discovered that room. He turned slowly, and Jasmine's breath caught. His blue eyes held none of their usual calculated shyness. Until you. I was looking for the Richardson contract, Jasmine said, lifting her chin, though I found quite a different kind of documentation, didn't I? A smile played at the corners of his mouth. Not the polite, restrained expression she was used to, but something darker, more genuine. And what did you think of my filing system? Impressive, she admitted, moving further into the office. Disturbing, but impressive. How many are there? In your collection? Hundreds. He said it without pride or shame, just simple fact. Each one carefully chosen, meticulously pursued, each conquest its own unique challenge. And that's all they were to you? Conquests? Jasmine stopped at his desk, resting her fingertips on its polished surface. All those women, all those intimate moments, just trophies for your private museum? Liam crossed the room with fluid grace, coming to stand on the other side of the desk. They knew what they were getting into. The chase, the seduction, the inevitable end. It was all part of the game. Everyone played their role. Except me. The words slipped out before she could stop them. His eyes darkened. Except you. Why? Jasmine demanded, leaning forward. Am I not your type? Not pretty enough for your collection? You're beautiful, he said, the words carrying none of his usual restraint. Intelligent, captivating, you're exactly my type. Then why? Because, with you, I never knew how to play the game. The confession hung in the air between them. Liam ran a hand through his dark hair, the first genuinely unself-conscious gesture she'd ever seen from him. From the moment you walked into that first interview, he continued, something was different. You saw through every practiced move, every careful gesture. Even when you didn't know you were doing it, you made me feel transparent. Jasmine's heart hammered against her ribs. So you hid behind the shy, proper gentleman act instead? It wasn't entirely an act. He moved around the desk, closing the distance between them. The careful, controlled part of me is real. The polite distance, the attention to detail, that's who I am. I just usually use those traits differently. To seduce women, Jasmine said flatly. To maintain control, he corrected. Every woman in that room knew exactly what they wanted from me. The charming publisher, the sophisticated lover, the man who would make them feel special for a brief, perfect moment. I gave them that fantasy, and they gave me the thrill of the chase. And what fantasy did you think I wanted? His laugh was low, almost bitter. That's just it, Jasmine. I could never figure you out. Every time I thought I had you categorized, you'd say something or do something that would completely disarm me. For the first time in my life, I found myself wanting to be genuine instead of strategic. And that... He stepped closer, close enough, that she could smell his cologne. That terrified me. Jasmine felt her pulse quicken, but she stood her ground. So you decided to play it safe instead? Hide behind politeness and pretend I was just another employee? I decided to be a coward, he admitted. Because the alternative was admitting that you made me want something real, something unscripted, something that couldn't be catalogued or controlled. The honesty in his voice was startling. Jasmine studied his face, looking for any trace of the calculated seducer, but found only raw vulnerability. Why are you telling me all this now? Because you found the room, his eyes locked with hers. Because you saw the worst of me, and you're still standing here. Because, for the first time in my life, I want someone to know the whole truth. The truth, Jasmine echoed. That you're Manhattan's most successful seducer? That you collect women like some people collect art? The truth that I've spent years hiding behind perfectly orchestrated encounters because real intimacy terrifies me. He took another step closer. The truth that you make me want to stop hiding. The air between them crackled with tension. Jasmine could feel the heat radiating from his body, see the pulse beating in his throat. This was Liam Brooks, stripped of all pretense, not the shy gentleman, not the calculated seducer, but something raw and real and unexpectedly vulnerable. How do I know this isn't just another game? She whispered. Another strategy. Because with you, Jasmine. His voice was rough with emotion. With you, I never knew how to play games. You make me want to burn the whole damn playbook. She should step back, should maintain professional distance, should remember every red flag that room represented. Instead, she found herself swaying slightly forward, drawn by the magnetic pull of truth finally spoken. I won't be another trophy in your collection, she said firmly. No, he agreed, reaching up to brush a strand of hair from her face. You could never be just another anything. The touch sent electricity through her skin, but before either of them could move closer, a sharp knock at the door shattered the moment. Mr. Brooks, a voice called through the door. Your 3 o'clock is here. Liam closed his eyes briefly, composing himself. When he opened them, Jasmine saw both versions of him wrestling for control, the polite professional and the passionate man she'd just glimpsed. We'll continue this discussion later, he said softly. Jasmine nodded, already stepping back, rebuilding her own professional walls. But as she moved to unlock the door, she turned back to him. I won't play games, Liam, she said quietly. If you want something real with me, you'll have to prove it, not with practiced moves or perfect words, but with truth. Something fierce and hungry flashed in his eyes. Truth can be dangerous, Jasmine. So can pretending, she countered, and slipped out the door before he could respond. Back at her desk, Jasmine's hands trembled as she tried to focus on her work. The mask had finally dropped, revealing the real Liam Brooks, complex, contradictory, and far more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. The question now was, what would he do with that revelation? And more importantly, what would she do with her growing attraction to the man behind the mask? The next few days in the office felt like dancing on a knife's edge. Every interaction between Jasmine and Liam crackled with unspoken tension, professional courtesy barely masking the electricity. Underneath, she caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, not with the calculated interest of a seducer, but with something more raw and uncertain. On Thursday morning, Jasmine arrived to find an envelope on her desk. Inside was a single key, unadorned except for a small note in Liam's precise handwriting. No more locked doors between us. She recognized it immediately. The key to his private office. The gesture should have felt like a power play. Another calculated move in, his repertoire of seduction. Instead, it felt like surrender. "Morning!" His voice behind her made her jump. Liam stood there, coffee in hand, not his usual carefully prepared cup from her, but a takeout cup from the artisanal place down the street. "I thought I'd handle my own coffee today, give you one less thing to worry about." The simple act of getting his own coffee spoke volumes. He was deliberately dismantling their careful routines, the professional boundaries that had defined their relationship. "Thank you for the key," Jasmine said, holding it up. "Though I'm not sure it's appropriate." "Probably not." His smile held, none of its former practiced politeness. "But I'm tired of appropriate." Before she could respond, the elevator chimed and a striking woman in her 40s stepped out. Jasmine recognized her immediately from the photographs in Liam's private room, one of his more recent conquests, if she remembered correctly. Christina. Liam's voice shifted subtly, taking on that smooth, controlled tone she now recognized. As his seducer's voice, "What brings you to our floor?" Christina Wellington, best-selling author of steamy historical romances and notorious flirt, sauntered toward them. "Can't a girl visit her favorite publisher?" Her eyes raked over Liam, appreciatively before landing on Jasmine. "And who's this?" "Jasmine Gray, my executive assistant." Liam's introduction was professional, but Jasmine noticed how he shifted slightly, positioning himself between the two women. "Christina is one of our most successful authors." "Among other things," Christina purred, and Jasmine saw the flash of discomfort cross Liam's face. "I was hoping we could discuss my new manuscript over dinner tonight, darling, for old time's sake." The air grew thick with tension. Jasmine busied herself with paperwork, pretending not to notice how Christina pressed closer to Liam or how his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'm afraid I have plans tonight," he said smoothly. "But I'd be happy to schedule a formal meeting to discuss your manuscript next week." Christina's perfectly painted lips curved downward. "Since when do you turn down dinner with me, Liam? You used to be much more accommodating." "Things change." His voice was firm, final. "Jasmine, would you please check my calendar and set up a proper meeting time for Ms. Wellington?" Jasmine opened his calendar on her tablet, aware of Christina's sharp gaze. "You have an opening next Tuesday at 2 p.m., Mr. Brooks." "Perfect." Liam turned back to Christina. "Tuesday at 2 then, in the conference room." The dismissal was clear. Christina's eyes narrowed as they darted between Liam and Jasmine, catching something in their careful distance that made her smile knowingly. "I see," she said softly. "Well, this is certainly interesting. I look forward to our meeting, Liam. Ms. Gray." With a final, meaningful look, she clicked her way back to the elevator. Once she was gone, Liam released a long breath. "I apologize for that." "For what?" Jasmine kept her voice neutral. "An author wanting to discuss her manuscript. You know that's not what that was." He stepped closer to her desk, lowering his voice. "Christina and I, there's history there." "I know exactly what kind of history," Jasmine said, thinking of the intimate photographs she'd seen. She's quite well documented in your private collection. Something like shame crossed his face. I'm not proud of how I've conducted my personal life, Jasmine, especially now that you what? Their eyes met, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. Now that I want something more than just another conquest. The words hung between them, heavy with possibility. Jasmine's heart thundered in her chest, but she forced herself to maintain composure. Mr. Brooks, an intern appeared with a stack of contracts. These need your signature before the end of day. The spell broke. Liam straightened, professional, mask sliding back into place. Of course, bring them into my office. As he turned to leave, he paused. Have dinner with me tonight. Jasmine blinked. What? Dinner. A real dinner, not some calculated seduction at an expensive restaurant. My place, I'll cook. His eyes held hers. No games, no pretense, just truth, like you asked for. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was a terrible idea. Going to his home, being alone with him, it was exactly the kind of situation she'd promised herself to avoid. I don't think I make a mean coq au vin, he interrupted, a hint of genuine nervousness in his smile. And I promise to answer any question you ask, completely honestly. The offer of total honesty was tempting. More tempting than the thought of dinner, more tempting even than the magnetic pull of attraction between them. Any question? She challenged. Any question, he confirmed, no matter how uncomfortable. Jasmine studied him, the careful way he held himself, the slight tension in his shoulders that betrayed his fear of rejection. This wasn't the smooth seducer or the shy publisher. This was just a man asking a woman to dinner. Okay, she found herself saying, but I have one condition. Name it. You have to show me the room again. She held up the key he'd given her, and explain every photo, every letter, every memento. If you want me to trust you, I need to understand who you really are. The color drained from his face, but he nodded. A deal? Though I should warn you, some of those stories aren't flattering. I don't want flattering, Jasmine said firmly. I want real. Real, he echoed, something vulnerable and hungry in his expression. That's something I haven't been in a very long time. The intern cleared his throat awkwardly, still holding the contracts. Liam straightened, professional mask sliding back into place. 8 o'clock, he asked softly. Jasmine nodded, already wondering if she was making a huge mistake. 8 o'clock. As she watched him disappear into his office, Jasmine's fingers traced the edge of the key he'd given her. Tonight, she would finally learn the full truth about Liam Brooks, every conquest, every seduction, every carefully orchestrated romance. The question was, would the truth bring them closer together or prove that some masks were better left in place? Liam's penthouse in the Upper East Side was exactly what Jasmine had expected. Elegant, meticulously organized, with floor-to-ceiling. Windows offering a stunning view of Central Park. What she hadn't expected was the warmth. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers, and the smell of cooking filled the air. In the kitchen, a bottle of wine breathed next to 2 glasses, and ingredients were laid out with careful precision on the marble counter. "You actually cook?" Jasmine observed, watching him move confidently around the kitchen in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made him look more approachable than his usual suits. "Did you think I was lying about the coq au vin?" He smiled, pouring her a glass of wine. "Cooking is like publishing. It's all about attention to detail and proper timing." "And seduction." The word slipped out before she could stop it. His hands stilled on the wine bottle. "That too, I suppose, though this isn't meant to be seduction." He met her eyes. "This is meant to be truth." Speaking of truth. Jasmine set down her wine glass. "You promised to show me the room." Straight to the hard part, then. His attempt at lightness couldn't quite mask his nervousness. "Follow me." He led her down a hallway lined with framed first additions to a door that looked identical to the others. But when he opened it, Jasmine's breath caught. The room was larger than his office version, but arranged with the same methodical care. Photographs, letters, and mementos covered the walls in chronological order, creating a timeline of conquests that stretched back over a decade. "Every woman in here knew what they were getting into," Liam said quietly, watching her take it all in. "I never promised anything more than what I could give." Jasmine moved closer to examine a photo, Liam with a redhead at what looked like a charity gala. Both were laughing, his arm around her waist with practiced intimacy. "Tell me about her." "Alexandra Pierce," he said, his voice taking on a clinical tone. "Junior editor at Random House. She wanted to feel sophisticated, worldly. I took her to gallery openings, opera premieres, exclusive restaurants, made her feel like she was living in a glamorous novel for 3 months. And then? It ended exactly as we both knew it would." He shrugged. "She got her sophisticated affair, I got—" He gestured to the photo and a small crystal champagne flute displayed beneath it. "A trophy," Jasmine finished. "Yes." He didn't try to defend it. They moved through the room slowly, Liam narrating each conquest with unflinching honesty. The ambitious intern who wanted to feel powerful, the divorced socialite looking to feel young again, the rival publisher who thought she could tame him. "Do you regret any of them?" Jasmine asked, studying a particularly intimate photograph. "Not the encounters themselves," he said after a moment. "They were all consenting adults who wanted exactly what I offered. I regret—" He ran a hand through his hair. "I regret letting it become a substitute for real connection, using seduction as a way to keep people at arm's length while pretending to let them in." Jasmine turned to face him. "Why did you start? What made you become this collector?" Liam was quiet for a long moment, staring at the wall of memories. "My first real relationship in college. I fell hard, gave everything, told her all my secrets. She used them to hurt me, to humiliate me. After that, I decided if I was going to be vulnerable with someone, I'd control exactly how much they could see." "So you created perfect romantic fantasies," Jasmine said softly. "Gave women exactly what they wanted while never showing them anything real about yourself. Until you—" His voice was rough. "You saw through every carefully constructed facade. Made me want to be seen." The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Jasmine's heart pounded as she looked around the room with new understanding. "And this?" She gestured to the displays. "Why keep everything? Why document it so carefully?" "Control," he admitted. "As long as I could catalogue everything, keep it contained and categorized, it couldn't hurt me. Couldn't become messy or real or—" He broke off, moving to a bare section of wall. "This space has been empty for months, ever since you started working for me." Jasmine's breath caught. "Why?" "Because for the first time in my life I met someone I didn't want to add to the collection." He turned to face her, vulnerability raw in his eyes. "Someone who made me want to tear down the whole damn archive and start over." The intensity of his gaze made her skin tingle. She took a step closer, close enough to smell his cologne mixed with the scent of cooking that clung to his sweater. "And if I wanted you to prove it," she challenged softly. "Prove that this isn't just another elaborate seduction." In answer, Liam moved to the nearest wall and began taking down photographs. His movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial, as he stripped the walls bare. Letters, mementos, carefully preserved memories, all came down under his methodical hands. "What are you doing?" Jasmine whispered, choosing reality over fantasy. He continued working, his voice tight with emotion, choosing the possibility of something real with you over the safety of my perfectly archived past. Jasmine watched as he boxed up years of conquests, each item carefully wrapped and packed away. When the last box was sealed, he turned to her, his eyes fierce with determination. "Have dinner with me," he said. "Not as the calculating seducer or the shy publisher or any other version of myself I've hidden behind. Just me, flaws and fears and all." The vulnerability in his voice made her heart ache. This wasn't the smooth operator who had collected countless hearts, or the reserved professional who kept everyone at arm's length. This was just a man, asking for a chance at something real. "Dinner sounds perfect," she said softly, "though I think your cocoa vin might be getting cold." His laugh was genuine, relieved. "Worth it." He gestured to the now bare room, "though I suppose I'll need to find a new use for this space." "A library," Jasmine suggested, taking his hand, "for storing actual books instead of broken hearts." His fingers intertwined with hers, warm and solid. "I like that idea. A fresh start." As they walked back to the kitchen, Jasmine felt something shift between them. The careful dance of seducer and prey was over, replaced by something more tentative, but infinitely more real. Tonight, they would share a meal and conversation without any masks or calculated moves, and maybe, just maybe, they would both learn what it meant to be truly seen and accepted, flaws and all. The Monday morning buzz of Brook and Hart Publishing felt surreal after the intimacy of Friday night. Jasmine sat at her desk, remembering how dinner had stretched into hours of conversation. They talked until nearly midnight, sharing stories and truths over perfectly cooked coq au vin and 2 bottles of wine. When she'd finally left, Liam had kissed her hand, an oddly old-fashioned gesture that had felt more genuine than any practiced seduction. Now, watching him emerge from the elevator in his usual impeccable suit, Jasmine wondered how they'd navigate this new territory. Their eyes met, and the slight softening of his expression made her heart skip. "Good morning, Miss Gray," he said, maintaining professional distance, even as his eyes conveyed something more intimate. "Could you join me in my office? We need to discuss the Anderson manuscript." Once inside, Liam closed the door and immediately seemed to relax, as if letting go of a breath he'd been holding. "I've been rehearsing how to act normal all morning," he admitted with a rueful smile. "How's that working out for you?" "Terribly." He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne. "I keep thinking about Friday night, about how you looked in my kitchen, wine glass in hand, asking me questions no one's ever dared to ask." Jasmine felt heat rise to her cheeks, but maintained her composure. "We should probably establish some ground rules. For the office." "Probably." "Wise." He leaned against his desk, loosening his tie slightly. "Though I have to admit, watching you be so professionally composed is incredibly distracting." "Liam." She gave him a warning look, though she couldn't quite suppress her smile. "I'm serious. We need boundaries." "You're right." He straightened, adopting a more businesslike posture. "What do you suggest?" Before she could answer, there was a knock at the door. Jasmine quickly stepped back, putting professional distance between them just as Tasha poked her head in. "Sorry to interrupt," Tasha said, her eyes darting between them with barely concealed interest. "But the quarterly numbers meeting is starting in 5 minutes, and they need the latest sales projections." "Of course." Liam's professional mask slipped seamlessly into place. "Ms. Gray, could you fetch those files from the private office?" The request was innocent enough, but they both knew the significance. That room, once his secret sanctuary of seduction, was now a space they shared understanding of. Jasmine nodded and headed for the door that had once been locked to her. The private office was exactly as they'd left it Friday. bare walls where photographs had hung, empty shelves that had displayed his trophies. Only his desk remained unchanged, neat stacks of contracts and manuscripts arranged with his usual precision. As she gathered the sales projections, Jasmine heard voices from the outer office. One was unfamiliar, female, carrying the kind of confidence that came with power. "I need to see him immediately. It's about the Mason situation." Jasmine froze. Mason. The name struck a chord. She'd seen it in Liam's journal, connected to multiple entries, multiple photographs. An important player in his past. "Mr. Brooks is preparing for a meeting," Tasha was saying, but the woman's heels were already clicking across the floor. "This can't wait." The office door opened, and Jasmine heard Liam's sharp intake of breath. "Rebecca." His voice carried a tension she'd never heard before. "I wasn't expecting you." "Clearly." The woman's tone was arch. "We need to talk about Mason. She's threatening to go public." Jasmine's hands tightened on the files. She should leave, give them privacy, but something kept her rooted to the spot. Public with what? Liam's voice was controlled, but she could hear the strain. "Everything. The affairs, the patterns, the collecting. She's writing a tell-all, piece for Vanity Fair, calls it The Publisher's Playbook, inside Manhattan's most calculated heartbreaker." The silence that followed was deafening. Jasmine's mind raced. Mason wasn't just another conquest. She was a journalist, and now she was about to expose everything. "How much does she know?" Liam finally asked. "Enough to damage you. Enough to damage the company. The board is already asking questions." Rebecca's voice hardened. "You need to handle this, Liam, whatever it takes." "I don't operate that way anymore." "Don't be naive. Your reputation, your career, everything you've built, it's all at stake. Make her an offer. Seduce her again. Do whatever you need to do, but shut this down." Jasmine had heard enough. She stepped out of the private office, files in hand, meeting Liam's startled gaze with steady eyes. Rebecca turned, a sleek woman, in her 50s, power suit and perfect makeup broadcasting corporate authority. Her eyes narrowed as she took in Jasmine's presence. "We'll discuss this later," she said to Liam, "when we have more privacy." After she left, the tension in the room was palpable. Liam looked like he'd aged years in minutes, his carefully maintained composure cracking. "Jasmine," he started, but she cut him off. "The quarterly numbers meeting is starting." She placed the files on his desk, maintaining professional distance. "We should go." "Please." His voice was rough. "Let me explain. Now isn't the time." She met his eyes, letting him see her confusion, her hurt, but also her determination to remain professional. "We have a meeting to attend." He nodded slowly, gathering the files, but as they walked to the conference room, his hand brushed hers, a brief, desperate touch. "Tonight," he whispered. "Please, let me tell you everything." Jasmine didn't respond, her mind whirling with implications. Mason wasn't just a threat to Liam's reputation. She was a test of his claimed transformation. Would he resort to his old tactics to protect himself? And if he did, what did that mean for the connection they'd started to build? As they took their seats in the conference room, Jasmine felt the weight of eyes on them. Rebecca's calculating gaze, Tasha's concerned glance, and Liam's desperate pleading looks. She kept her expression neutral, but inside her heart raced. The game had changed. What had started as a simple exposure of Liam's past was about to become public knowledge, and now they both had to decide. Was what they were building strong enough to survive the storm that was coming? The quarterly numbers meeting dragged on endlessly, a blur of sales projections and market analyses that Jasmine barely registered. Her attention kept drifting to Liam, watching how he maintained his composed facade while tension radiated from every line of his body. When he spoke, his voice was steady, his insights sharp as ever, but she could see the slight tremor in his hands as he shuffled through papers. By 6 o'clock, the office had mostly emptied. Jasmine sat at her desk, staring at her darkened computer screen, wondering if she should just go home and let everything settle. "Please don't leave." She looked up to find Liam standing there, his tie loosened, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. "We need to talk about Mason. Your place or mine?" The question came out more challenging than she'd intended. "Neutral ground," he suggested. "There's a small wine bar around the corner, private booths, quiet atmosphere." 20 minutes later, they sat across from each other in a dimly lit corner of Le Petit Cave. A bottle of red wine sat between them, untouched. Liam stared at his empty glass as if gathering courage. Mason wasn't just another conquest, he finally said. She was different. Different how? She was the first one who played the game better than I did. He poured wine for both of them, his movements precise despite his obvious tension. Caroline Mason, features writer for several major magazines. She approached me at a publishing event 3 years ago, and for once I was the one being pursued. Jasmine took a sip of wine, letting him continue. She was brilliant, beautiful, and completely transparent about what she wanted. She told me she'd heard about my reputation, about my collection, said she wanted to experience it firsthand. His laugh was bitter. I should have known then that it was too perfect. She was gathering material, Jasmine realized, all along. For months, she let me think I was seducing her, while she was actually documenting everything, the patterns, the techniques, the trophies. He ran a hand through his hair. She even got photographs of the room, though I never knew how. And now she's going to expose everything. "Unless I handle it," he quoted Rebecca's words with distaste. "Which means either paying her off or seducing her again," Jasmine finished. "Giving her what she wants to kill the story." Liam's eyes met hers, fierce with determination. "I won't do it. I won't go back to being that person. Even if it costs you everything." "The board will probably force me out," he admitted. "The scandal would be too much, especially given our more conservative authors. My reputation in publishing would be—" He trailed off, taking a long drink of wine. "You could stop her," Jasmine said quietly. "You know how. You've done it before." "I could." His voice was rough. "I could turn on the charm, make her feel special again, promise her everything she wants to hear. I could probably even convince her I've changed, that she's the one who made me want to be better." His hands clenched on the table. "But every word would be a lie, and I'm tired of lying." The raw honesty in his voice made Jasmine's heart ache. She reached across the table, covering his clenched fist with her hand. "What do you want to do?" He turned his hand over, intertwining their fingers. "I want to face it. Let her publish the article. Deal with the consequences." "Why?" "Because running from the truth is what got me here in the first place." His thumb traced patterns on her palm. "Because I want to be worthy of what's starting between us, and I can't do that if I'm still playing games." Jasmine studied him in the dim light. This man who had spent years perfecting the art of seduction, now choosing to let his carefully constructed world fall apart rather than resort to his old tactics. "It won't be easy," she warned. "The media will have a field day. Your authors might leave. The board—" "I know." He squeezed her hand. "But for the first time in my life, I'm more afraid of losing my chance at something real than I am of losing my reputation." The weight of his words hung between them. Jasmine thought about everything at stake, his career, his position, the life he'd built. And yet— "What if we got ahead of it?" she suggested slowly. "What do you mean?" "Instead of letting Mason tell the story her way, what if you told it first? Complete honesty about who you were, but also about who you're choosing to be now. Liam sat back, considering. A preemptive confession. More like taking control of your own narrative. Jasmine leaned forward, warming to the idea. We could approach a respected publication, someone who'd tell the whole story, not just the scandals, but the transformation. Your decision to change, to choose authenticity over manipulation. We? His eyes searched hers. You'd help me with this? I'm your executive assistant, aren't I? She smiled softly. Besides, I might have a bit of a vested interest in your redemption story. The hope that bloomed in his expression made him look younger, more open. You'd be linked to all of this. People would assume. Let them assume. Jasmine lifted her chin. I know the truth. I've seen who you really are. Both the man you were and the one you're trying to become. I'm not afraid of people knowing I believe in that change. Liam stared at their joined hands, emotion tight in his throat. I don't deserve you. Probably not, she teased, then grew serious. But you're trying to deserve what's between us. That's what matters. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. If we do this, tell the whole truth. There's no going back. No more perfect image. No more carefully maintained control. Good. Jasmine held his gaze. I prefer the real you anyway. Imperfections and all. A small smile tugged at his lips. Even when the real me is terrified. Especially then. She squeezed his hand. It means you have something worth being afraid of losing. They stayed in that quiet booth for hours, planning their strategy, discussing which publication to approach, how to frame the story. But more than that, they were crossing a threshold together, choosing truth over appearance, substance over safety. As they finally stepped out into the cool night air, Liam pulled Jasmine close, his kiss carrying none of his old calculated perfection. Instead, it was slightly desperate, a little messy and completely real. Whatever happens, he whispered against her lips, thank you for making me brave enough to face it. Jasmine wrapped her arms around him, feeling the rapid beat of his heart against hers. Tomorrow, they would begin the process of dismantling his carefully constructed facade, facing the judgment and scandal that would follow. But tonight, in the quiet darkness of a Manhattan street, they had each other, and the simple, terrifying freedom of being exactly who they were. This is career suicide, Rebecca declared, pacing Liam's office the next morning. You can't seriously be considering giving an interview exposing everything. Liam sat calmly behind his desk, Jasmine standing beside him with a tablet in hand. The morning light streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the room. I've already contacted the New Yorker, he said. Claire Davidson has agreed to write the piece. She's one of the most respected journalists in the industry. Claire Davidson? Rebecca stopped pacing. The same Claire Davidson who wrote that scathing expose on corporate corruption in publishing last year? The very same. Jasmine pulled up the email confirmation. She's interested in exploring the broader themes, power dynamics in publishing, the culture of seduction and silence, the possibility of genuine change. Rebecca's perfectly manicured hands gripped the back of a chair. The board will never approve this. I'm not asking for their approval. Liam's voice was firm. I'm informing them of my decision. The interview is scheduled for tomorrow. And what about Mason's article? Let her publish it. Liam stood, his height forcing Rebecca to look up at him. But her sensationalized account will come after the truth is already out there. My truth, told my way. Rebecca's eyes narrowed as she looked between Liam and Jasmine. This is your influence, isn't it? You've gotten into his head, made him think he needs to bare his soul to the world. Actually, Jasmine met her gaze steadily, I just helped him find the courage to be who he already wanted to be. The tension in the room was broken by a knock at the door. Tasha entered with a concerned expression. "Mr. Brooks, Mason is here. She's demanding to see you." Liam and Jasmine exchanged glances. This was earlier than they'd expected, but perhaps it was better to face everything head-on. "Send her in," Liam said, moving to stand by the window. "Rebecca, you might want to stay for this." Caroline Mason swept into the office like a storm front, all sleek blonde hair and sharp edges. Her designer dress spoke of success, but her eyes held the hungry look of someone who knew they had the upper hand. "Liam," her smile was predatory, "I assume you got my message through Rebecca." "I did." He turned to face her, and Jasmine saw the subtle shift in his posture, not into his seducer's persona, but into something more genuine and therefore more powerful. "Thank you for coming by. It saves me the trouble of contacting you." Mason's smile faltered slightly. "Oh? Yes. I wanted to let you know that I'm giving an exclusive interview to The New Yorker. Full disclosure about everything. My past behavior, the collection, the manipulation, including my relationship with you." The color drained from Mason's face. "You're bluffing. Claire Davidson is writing it." Liam's voice was calm. "The interview is tomorrow. The article should run before your Vanity Fair piece." "You can't," Mason started, then collected herself. "You're willing to destroy everything you've built, your reputation, your career?" "I'm willing to be honest." Liam moved closer to her. "Isn't that what you wanted? To expose the truth?" "I wanted to expose you as a fraud. And instead, you'll have to write about a man who chose to expose himself." His smile held no seduction, just quiet certainty. "Quite a different story, isn't it?" Mason's eyes darted to Jasmine, comprehension dawning. "This is about her, isn't it? You're trying to prove something to your new conquest." "No," Liam said softly. "This is about finally being worthy of someone who saw the real me and didn't run away. Someone who made me want to stop running too." The silence that followed was electric. Mason looked between them, her journalist's instincts clearly picking up the shift in the story. "You're really going to do this," she said finally. "Tear down everything you've built, risk your whole career just to— What? Start over?" "Not start over." Liam's hand found Jasmine's, intertwining their fingers. "Start fresh. There's a difference." Rebecca, who had been watching the exchange with calculating eyes, finally spoke. "If you're determined to do this, at least let me handle the board. We need a strategy for damage control." Actually," Jasmine said, "I have some ideas about that." She pulled up a document on her tablet. "I've drafted a proposal for how we can frame this as a transformative moment for the company, a chance to address the industry's broader issues. With power and consent." Mason's professional curiosity seemed to override her personal agenda. "What kind of issues?" "The ones you were planning to write about," Jasmine said. "The power dynamics, the unspoken expectations, the culture of silence. But instead of just exposing the problem, we're offering a path forward. Real change. Starting." From the top, the wheels were visibly turning in Mason's head. A redemption story is less explosive than an exposé, but potentially more impactful, Jasmine countered, especially if it sparks a larger conversation about change in the industry. "2 articles," Mason said suddenly. "Mine follows yours, but instead of just attacking, I explore the aftermath, the reactions, the implications, the possibility of genuine transformation." She looked at Liam, "Assuming, of course, you prove it's genuine." "I intend to." His grip on Jasmine's hand tightened slightly. "Starting with the interview tomorrow." Rebecca sighed heavily. "I'll call an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. We need to present a united front before this breaks." She fixed Liam with a stern look. "You're going to tell them everything first?" No surprises. After Mason and Rebecca left, Liam sank into his chair, the weight of what they were about to do finally showing in his expression. "Having second thoughts?" Jasmine asked softly. "Terrified thoughts," he admitted, "but not second ones." He pulled her closer, pressing his forehead against her shoulder. "Thank you for believing in me enough to risk everything. Thank you for being brave enough to try." She ran her fingers through his hair, feeling him relax slightly under her touch. "Ready to face the board?" He lifted his head, meeting her eyes with a mix of fear and determination. "Ready to face everything. As long as you're with me." "Always," she promised, and sealed it with a kiss that held all the hope and uncertainty of new beginnings. Outside his office, they could hear the regular rhythms of the workday continuing, unaware that by tomorrow everything would change. But in that moment, holding each other in the quiet of his office, they were exactly where they needed to be, on the edge of something terrifying and true. Claire Davidson was nothing like what Jasmine had expected. Instead of the hardened investigative journalist she'd imagined, Claire was a petite woman in her 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes that didn't quite mask her razor-sharp intelligence. She sat in Liam's living room, recorder placed precisely, on the coffee table between them. "Before we begin," Claire said, adjusting her reading glasses, "I want to be clear about something. This isn't just going to be about your past conquests, Mr. Brooks. I'm interested in the larger story, the power dynamics in publishing, the culture that enabled your behavior, and most importantly, what real change looks like." Liam sat straight-backed on his sofa, Jasmine beside him. They had debated whether she should be present for the interview, ultimately deciding that transparency meant showing their relationship exactly as it was. "I understand," Liam replied, "and please, call me Liam." Claire nodded, pressing record. "Let's start at the beginning. When did you first realize you could use charm as a weapon?" For the next 3 hours, Liam laid bare his history. He spoke about his college heartbreak, his gradual transformation into Manhattan's most calculated seducer, the careful way he had documented each conquest. Claire listened intently, occasionally glancing at Jasmine when Liam described particularly difficult moments. "The room," Claire said, referring to his collection. "Tell me about the decision to dismantle it." Liam's hand found Jasmine's. "It was the first time I chose reality over fantasy. The first time I wanted something genuine enough to let go of control." "And you, Miss Gray?" Claire turned to Jasmine. "What made you trust him after discovering his past?" Jasmine considered her words carefully. "I saw someone fighting to be better, not because it was easy or safe, but because it was right. That kind of courage, it's rare. Even knowing you could end up as just another conquest. The fact that he's sitting here about to risk everything by telling the truth, that proved I never was." Claire's eyes softened slightly. "And the board? How did they react to your decision to go public?" The meeting with the board had been intense. Yesterday afternoon, they had sat in the elegant conference room as Liam laid out everything, his past behavior, the impending exposé, their strategy to control the narrative. The silence that followed his confession had been deafening. "They were concerned, obviously," Liam said diplomatically. "They were terrified," Jasmine corrected, remembering the barely contained panic in the room. "But when we presented our full strategy, using this as a catalyst for industry-wide change, they began to see the potential." "Tell me about this strategy." Liam leaned forward. "We're implementing new policies about power dynamics and relationships in the workplace, creating clear channels for reporting misconduct. But more than that, we're opening a broader conversation about the culture of publishing itself." "And you're willing to be the cautionary tale." "I'm willing to be the example of change being possible," Liam countered. Yes, I'll take the hits for my past behavior, but I'm also showing that transformation is possible when you're brave enough to face your mistakes. The interview continued, delving deeper into specific incidents, policy changes, and the future of Broken Heart Publishing. As the afternoon light began to fade, Claire finally turned off her recorder. One last question, off the record, she said, studying them both. Are you prepared for the backlash? This story won't just impact your professional lives. Jasmine felt Liam tense beside her. They had discussed this extensively. The potential impact on their relationship, the scrutiny they would face, the possibility of it all becoming too much. We're prepared, Jasmine said firmly. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. After Claire left, they sat in the growing darkness of Liam's living room. The weight of what they'd done, the truths they'd exposed, the changes they'd set in motion, settled around them like a heavy blanket. I've never felt more exposed, Liam admitted, his voice rough, or more relieved. Jasmine turned to study his profile in the dim light. Regrets? Only about my past. Not about this. He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. Not about us. The quiet moment was interrupted by both their phones chiming simultaneously. Breaking news alerts from various publishing industry. Blogs, exclusive, major publishing house executive to reveal industry-shaking scandal. It's starting, Jasmine murmured, scanning the headlines. Someone at the board meeting must have leaked it. Liam's phone began ringing. Rebecca, probably already in damage control mode, but before he could answer it, another call came through. Mason. He put the phone on speaker. Hello, Caroline. I just saw the headlines. Mason's voice was tight, with controlled emotion. I hope you realize this changes everything about my article. That was rather the point. The angle I had planned, the calculated seducer, the secret trophy room. It feels inadequate now. There was a pause. I want to interview you both, together, about what happens after the fairy tale falls apart, about what real change looks like. Jasmine and Liam exchanged glances. This was an unexpected turn, but perhaps a fitting one. When? Jasmine asked. Tomorrow, before the New Yorker piece drops. I want to be ready with the follow-up story immediately. Agreed, Liam said. But Caroline, this time let's tell the whole truth. No games, no angles. Just the messy, complicated reality of trying to be better. After hanging up, they sat in contemplative silence. Outside, the city lights began twinkling on, a reminder that life would continue regardless of what tomorrow brought. You know, Jasmine said softly, when I first started working for you, I thought you were the most inoffensive man in Manhattan. Liam's laugh was warm against her hair. And now? Now I know you're the most complicated, frustrating, beautifully honest man I've ever met. She turned to face him. And I wouldn't have it any other way. His kiss was tender, carrying all the vulnerability and strength of their shared journey. Tomorrow, their world would explode into chaos as headlines broke and stories spread. But tonight, in the quiet darkness of his apartment, they had found something neither of them had been looking for. The simple, terrifying joy of being truly known and loved anyway. Whatever happens tomorrow, Liam whispered against her lips, we've already won. We chose truth over perfection, reality over fantasy. We chose us, Jasmine corrected, pulling him closer. Everything else is just details. Outside, their phones continued buzzing with notifications, but they paid them no attention. The storm was coming, but they were ready. Together, they had already weathered the hardest part, learning to be real in a world built on carefully constructed illusions. 2 weeks after the New Yorker article dropped, Jasmine stood in what had once been Liam's trophy room, now transformed into a warm, inviting library. The walls that had once displayed his conquests now held floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with first editions and manuscripts that represented the real heart of publishing. The media storm had been intense, exactly as they'd expected. "Manhattan's most calculated heartbreaker comes clean," screamed one headline. "Publishing giant's secret seduction museum revealed," declared another. But Claire Davidson's article had done exactly what they'd hoped, turned a potential scandal into a conversation about power, change, and redemption. "The last box just arrived from storage," Liam said from the doorway, holding a package. "First editions I've been collecting for years. Seemed fitting to finally bring them home." Jasmine watched as he carefully unpacked the books, his movements holding the same precision she'd first mistaken for shyness. Now she understood it was simply part of who he was, his attention to detail, his careful consideration, his thorough approach to everything that mattered. "The board meeting went well?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. She'd been there watching as Liam presented the final numbers showing that their transparency had actually increased their standing in the industry. Better than well. He shelved a leather-bound copy of Pride and Prejudice with careful hands. 3 major authors who were considering leaving have signed new contracts. Apparently, they appreciate working with a publisher who's willing to face hard truths. And Mason's follow-up article helped. "The reformation of a rake, love in the age of accountability," Liam quoted with a slight smile. Not exactly the exposé she originally planned. Mason's article in Vanity Fair had been surprisingly touching, exploring how real change happens not through public shame, but through personal choice and genuine connection. She'd interviewed them together, capturing the complex journey from discovery to confrontation to transformation. "Christina called today," Jasmine said, watching his reaction carefully. "She wants to move her next book to a different publisher." "I expected that." Liam continued shelving books, his composure intact. "Some people preferred the old version of me, the one who played games and kept score. And you, do you miss him sometimes?" Liam set down the book he was holding and turned to face her fully. "Do you know what I realized? All those perfectly orchestrated seductions, all those careful manipulations, they were never about desire. They were about control, about keeping everyone at a safe distance while pretending to let them in." He moved closer, taking her hands in his. "But this, being nervous about touching you, feeling my heart race when you smile, not knowing exactly what to say or do, this is real desire. Real feeling, and it's terrifying and wonderful and so much better than perfect ever was." A knock at the door interrupted them. Tasha stood there, tablet in hand, looking apologetic. "Sorry to interrupt, but you both need to see this." She handed over the tablet, open to an industry blog. The headline read, "Brook and Hart sets new industry standard. Publishing giant implements groundbreaking workplace relationship policies." "The announcement went live an hour ago," Tasha said. "Social media is blowing up. Other publishing houses are already facing pressure to follow our lead." Liam wrapped an arm around Jasmine's waist as they read the article together. The policy changes they'd helped design. Clear guidelines about power dynamics, transparent reporting procedures, protection for those who came forward, were being hailed as revolutionary in an industry known for its unspoken rules and hidden power plays. "This is really happening," Jasmine murmured. "We're actually changing things." "You're changing things," Tasha corrected. "Both of you, by choosing to be real in an industry built on appearances." She smiled at them. "It's a good look." After she left, they stood in comfortable silence, surrounded by books instead of trophies, truth instead of tactics. Jasmine turned in Liam's arms to face him. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day in your office, when I confronted you about the room? 'With you, I never knew how to play games,'" he quoted softly. "Because with you, Jasmine, I wanted to feel for real." And now, his smile was gentle, genuine. Nothing like the calculated charm he'd once wielded like a weapon. Now, I feel everything. The fear of messing up, the joy of getting it right, the complete terror of loving someone who knows all my flaws and stays. Anyway, loving? Jasmine's heart skipped. Loving, he confirmed, pulling her closer. Completely, imperfectly, real. She reached up to touch his face, feeling the slight tremor in his hands as they held her. This was the man she'd fallen for. Not the shy facade or the skilled seducer, but the complex, flawed, beautifully honest person who had chosen truth over safety, love over control. "I love you too," she whispered against his lips. "All of you, the calculating publisher and the nervous lover, the man who collected hearts and the one brave enough to risk his own." Their kiss was sweet and deep, holding all the promise of a future built on truth rather than tricks. Outside, the publishing world was still buzzing with their story. Somewhere other powerful men were probably reading the article and sweating. Change was coming to their carefully controlled world, one truth at a time. But here in this room, surrounded by books instead of trophies, Jasmine and Liam had already found their happy ending. Not in perfect seduction or flawless control, but in the beautiful mess of real love, the kind that sees all your secrets and chooses you anyway. As evening fell over Manhattan, casting long shadows through the library windows, they held each other in the room that had once housed conquests, but now held only truth, their love, their perfectly imperfect reality, and in the end, that was the greatest seduction of all. The end. Thanks for watching to the end. Did you like the story? Tell us what you thought in the comments below. We want to know what you think. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe now for more exciting stories you won't want to miss. Activate the bell to be notified whenever a new video comes out. See you in the next story. See you there.